because you'll find that, let me give you an example, Logan. Like, let's say like you're like my background was a project management oil and gas engineer. That's like some people would define me as that, and people have tried to define me as that. But who am I to walk away from that and go become a business coach and public speaker and a best-selling author? Like, who am I? A lot of people will never take that chance to go be who they should be because they're so held onto this persona that they've created over time and expense and network that they're afraid to leave that because it's like their security blanket. But this book kind of explains like you should never hold on to things for foolish reasons. It's like that's what small-minded people do. There's even a statement in there about like the foolish mind and being able to change your.
This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hey, ladies and gents, thank you so much for taking the time to listen into this episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. I know you can be listening or watching or, doing so many other things. Instead, you came and took the time to do this. So, I've got to give you guys the goods for doing so. I have an incredible guest on today. His name is Tony Whatley. He is a serial entrepreneur, business consultant, and startup mentor. He has led a dual career for over 20 years in two distinct industries, oil and gas and automotive performance. But I don't want to give you just his bio. I want you guys to really get to know him in this interview and who he is now, not just who he was in the past, but who he is now. So without further ado, give yourself a warm welcome to the one and only Tony Whatley.
Logan, thank you for inviting me on the show. I can't wait to get to know your listeners better and share some value with these people.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, dude. Me too. So, first question I want to ask you is what's the best story from your life that has an underlying message?
What is the best story from my life? Let's wind it all the way back to my childhood and teenage years and even part of my 20s. I would say that growing up in the lower middle class demographic of the population here in the US, here in the Houston area, I've always been the Houston, Texas area. When you're surrounded by people who just have aspirations of goals to be average, you start to adopt their goals as your own, and you just don't know any better because you're not exposed to any of the outside world of how things are really going on. And you hear these things, these self-limiting behaviors and just negative things about people who have success. And you hear things like, that's not for us, that's them, they were born into it, they won the lottery, you got to kiss ass to get there. All these excuses that people use to justify why they're still in the average mindset. But that's your influencers, when you look up to them as your mentors and you don't really have any other basis to go on, you start to adopt their goals. And you find that the average person, their goals in life tend to be something very similar. They tell you, get a steady job, buy a house, have a mortgage, own a car, find a spouse, have two children. And if you can check all those boxes, you've made it, man. You've reached success, and that's what you tend to grow up with in that demographic. So when I was younger, I grew up in some areas that had some nicer homes, and I would just get on my bicycle and pedal around and look at these giant homes with all these windows and floors and extra cars in the driveway. And I was like, wow, what is it like to run around in a house that big and like have all these windows to look out of? Like, that's incredible. Like at the front of my house has like two windows. Like, I don't even know what to do with all this stuff and extra cars. Do all those people actually live there? Or do people have more than one car? It's like, these are the things I would think about. And so I just started doing more things to pay more attention to the people that achieved the things that I wanted to achieve and started disregarding the advice from the people who just ended their own dreams and basically went the path of least resistance and became complacent and didn't strive for goals. I just decided I wanted to have more than that. So I just started looking for other avenues to get there. And I would say that you have to be able to evolve and change yourself and just become the person that you need to be to have those goals. Because a lot of times people blame not having something for other people or other situations or their environment when it's really that you haven't become the right person to have those rewards yet.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that's crazy. Have you ever found yourself ever this is I'm just taking a turn. I don't usually ask this question, but have you ever gotten what you actually dreamed of wanting? Like you manifested it inside your head, um, and then you found out that that wasn't the thing you wanted.
No, I've never been disappointed with hitting a goal. I actually celebrate every single goal I've ever achieved, and I do manifest things and I do visualize things in extreme detail. And then when they happen, I pretty much have that same emotion when I experience it in reality. But what I have found is that if you think that you're going to be fulfilled or find happiness just from achieving those goals, then you may be mistaken because if you're someone that's goal setted and goal oriented, you're going to realize that you never run out of goals. The goals are endless. You just keep going. So you're always just like looking to challenge yourself and take the next step. So by all means, like reward yourself from these prizes, whatever it may be. If you're motivated by cars or a house or a career or something like that, reward yourself, celebrate in that moment, and really experience that, and really tie into the visualizations and reinforce that that was a great behavior and a great habit to get into. But then move on to the next goal. Like don't get complacent. Figure out what the next goal is. Extend yourself. Make it a little harder this time, maybe, and you'll find that it's fun. To me, it's like a game. It's fun. It's a fun challenge to get there, and then I get there and I'm like, cool. Like, what's next? Like, there's always what's next with me, but I'm okay with that. I don't feel like I'm hitting despair or unhappiness because I have that feeling.
Oh man, I love that. I love that process. Process driven, very much so. And then also celebrating the wins along the way. So, what is it about your industry that is the most valuable piece of advice you'd like us to know?
I would say for the coaching industry in general, or even let's round it out to the self-improvement, personal development industry, because I've been doing this really publicly for the last year and a half, even though I've been helping people in their businesses for about 10 years now in the background, because that was a side hustle thing. It was something I enjoyed. I enjoyed teaching people, helping them level up. And I started to see good results from the people I was helping. And they made the recommendations and testimonials like, hey, you should be doing this full time. Like, we're getting real results from this. More people need to know about this. And that's when I started thinking about maybe I should write a book on the things I've accomplished. And for your listeners that don't know my background, I started one of the largest websites for an automotive community on the internet. I started that in 2001 and it sold for multiple seven figures only 6 years later. So it kind of grew and grew and grew, but it was because we had these processes and systems and beliefs and ways to govern a business that most people throw to the wayside. We really focused on customer service, support, adding a lot more value than the cost, and just doing things differently than other companies that were out there doing it at the time to get ahead. So these principles just translate to all types of businesses. And I started to help other people with different types of companies. But what I found that me being doing this in the background is that there was very little good information out there. Even 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people out there in the personal development space willing to share their information. We didn't have social media. This was pre-Facebook, pre-Instagram, and people tend to guard their secrets back then. Like if you didn't know, like you just weren't going to know unless you worked with that person as a mentor or read a book somewhere or had somebody to learn from, or you went to school to get your university degree to try to learn that way. I don't really recommend that in a lot of degrees nowadays, but that was all we had back then. But nowadays it's like there's so many people out there trying to flood this space that don't really know what they're doing, but there's just basically regurgitating information that somebody else has shared with them, but they have no experience themselves, operating or living by that action. So to me, it's like there's too many people jumping into the space that aren't really doing anything or adding any value. They're trying to make their business the coaching thing rather than a business before that, or achieving some kind of a success for what they're teaching before that. And so that was partly one of the reasons I got into the space is like I need to get my word out there and help people because I actually have results and have done the things that I'm trying to teach people to do.
Yeah, man. Oh, geez, you go on for hours about that. Like, all of a sudden, oh, want to start a business? Let's do life coaching. Want to start a business? Let's be a business coach. Or, and even a side note, I love how you tackle down what's that one thing that really angered me kind of the space, and let me start a business out of that. Sounds like you're kind of tackling that question right now, and going off of that, what is one quote that you live by to keep yourself just going even though the times are tough?
I have a lot of quotes I like to share, but one that just keeps resonating with me and it's a very simple one, it's a very popular one, is by Gandhi. And it just says, be the change that you wish to see in the world.
See, that's it. That's such a gem right there. I
I
love
mean,
that.
really, it always goes down to that. We can sit here and complain about situations. I mean, if you unfortunately follow any news or politics or anything like that on social medias, which I highly recommend you just delete from your feed. Just don't even let that stuff into your head because they manipulate things with different messages, and sometimes they're manipulating with messages that you already agree with, which is just as terrible because they're basically putting food into your feeding trough, your mental trough, to try to keep you angry or feel some kind of tension about something. But there's so many people out there blaming everything on everyone else. Like, oh, yeah, and all these people are, my situation's because of this, or whoever's president, or whoever's the senator, or whoever's the mayor. They're taking all these things that are being fed to them and thinking that everything else is their situation, someone else's fault. They're not taking accountability for themselves. And rather than focus on changing themselves, they wish everybody else would change, and that's just not going to work. I mean, even that famous song by John Mayer, waiting on the world to change. That's It's not going to happen. Like you got to be the one that change. You have to change yourself. That's where the change comes from. It's not waiting on the world to change.
No, yeah, 100%. I would be kicking myself in the butt if I didn't ask this question to you because, you've helped a lot of people with starting side hustles or starting businesses and then coaching them through that business once they do. What's the main reason why most people fail?
I would say that over the years of me helping people achieve things, I started to see some common characteristics within people. And what I've come to realize is I'm actually more of a confidence coach than a business mentor. You'll find that the information out there is readily available to startup companies. If you wanted to put in the research, the information's available. You don't have to go to the university and get a business management degree and things like that nowadays to learn that information. There's several books, mentors, podcasts, YouTube videos. I mean, they're all over the place, but the information's out there and it's easy to find. I mean, if you were to read my book, I handhold you and kind of walk you through each step of that as well. But the main difference is a lot of people just don't have that self-confidence to take the steps. They see this overwhelming pile of things and tasks and activities that they have to do to create this successful business. And if you look at the thing in the majority, like it's a pile of tasks, literally, you don't know where to start. You start to do things out of sequence and it screws things up and you kind of go down the wrong path and you waste time and money doing things the wrong way. But the main thing is they just don't have the courage to start. So, there's metrics out there that say 40% of the workforce dreams of starting a business, but only 10% of the people actually take that action. So, what are that other 30% of the people doing? A lot of times they're just over analyzing things or think they're making excuses that everybody that their peers make excuses for them. They sit there and talk about people like, we don't have time, we don't have money. Oh, my kids keep me from doing this, or my wife or my husband prevent me from doing this. And so they have all these convenient excuses because of the circles they run in, and everybody in those circles just tends to share the same excuses with each other. So then there's never any resolution to any of these problems. They just keep hearing the same excuses, and they just kind of end the conversation and they turn off their brain.
Yeah, yeah, man. I can't nod my head and smile as big as I am today. Yeah, you're so right. So I do want to ask though, because Tony, let's not lie anymore, man. You got some pretty good net worth in your pocket. You got some deep pockets. What do you think's more important though, your net worth or your network?
I think your worth, the financial things can be taken from you in an instant. Your network tends to last forever as long as you treat people, the way you should be. And I think you can always come back again from a strong network of support. I think the key to success that you find at the higher levels, I think you can get to middle of the road success. Like you may become a manager at your job, or you may make $100,000. I think you can get there on your own, but to achieve the larger, 7, 8, 9 figure type successes, you're going to have to lean more on the collaboration and the network at some point. And I think you'll find that the most successful people, especially people in their younger age demographic, they got there by collaborating with the right people. Because when you start to find people in that network that are growth mindseted rather than fixed mindset, like here, let me explain that, because a fixed mindset is somebody who thinks everybody's their competitor and they guard their secrets and they just kind of come off with an ego that they're the best. And a growth mindset person tends to see everybody as, hey, there's plenty of success in the world. I don't have to guard this pile. There's plenty of piles everywhere. I can be successful. You can be successful. We can help each other become even more successful together. And then you start to find those kind of networks and you collaborate and you grow and you grow and you grow your influence and you grow your financials and your opportunities. Those are the ways to get to the highest levels. Is you have to get there with collaboration. It's just not going to work without it.
Yeah, 100%, man. I love that answer just now. Yeah, Carol Dweck on mindset. That's a great book. On top of that, what's another one of your favorite books and why?
I would say the most recent book would be Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I read a lot of books. I go through audiobooks at least one a week. So I'm on track, like usually 60, 70 books a year. And I've been doing that for the last few years. I used to just flip pages before. I used to think I was a visual learner. So I made an excuse, like a self-limiting belief that, oh, I can't listen to audiobooks because I had to see things visually. That's how it was in college. Like I had to see it on the board. I had to write it down to remember it. And so I just discounted like all like audiobooks for years because I was like, I'm just not going to learn that way. But that was a self-limiting belief, and I actually started giving it a chance and listening. And sometimes I do listen to books twice, but sometimes I learn different things each time I listen to them because I'm more focused on a different part of the book. But I would say that Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson was a very powerful one that I kind of rely on more recently, because that book is all about becoming a free thinker. It's not following the herd mentality. It's not doing what's popular. It's not doing what your peers tell you that you are. It's not holding on to a persona or an image that you've created for foolish reasons, because you'll find that, let me give you an example, Logan. Like let's say like you're like my background was a project management oil and gas engineer. That's like some people would define me as that, and people have tried to define me as that. But who am I to walk away from that then and go become a business coach and public speaker and a best-selling author? Like, who am I? A lot of people will never take that chance to go be who they should be because they're so held on to this persona that they've created over time and expense and network, that they're afraid to leave that because it's like their security blanket. But this book kind of explains like you should never hold on to things for foolish reasons. It's like that's what small-minded people do. There's even a statement in there about like the foolish mind, and being able to change your mind and be vocal about that is a very powerful thing. It's like, and like I mentioned about politics earlier, like it's okay to change your mind based on new information, new discoveries, new realizations, new calculations. Like things get questioned all the time, and even in science, and things happen, and we learn new things as we go. And it's okay to change your mind, but you'll find that the vast majority of people will hold on to their old decisions because they've already put that out there and they don't want to look flaky or flip floppy or whatever. And so they hold on to it for a foolish reason, even though they thoroughly believe in something else now. So they're afraid to take that stance and be a leader, step out, be more vocal, and understand that your opinions and your thoughts can change at any time, and you should embrace that. And it's going to give you the best opportunities, because you're going to find that the most successful people are the ones who basically vocalize their own beliefs, their own opinions, and basically were willing to stand out from that crowd to distinguish themselves. I mean, think about even all the historic people in the times, like thousands of years back. Even Jesus was someone who stood out against things and had something he believed in, and built that influence and followed her. So it's, you can't be willing to stay in this herd. You have to be willing to step out and be who you really are.
Yeah, man, I so agree. Yeah, I used to say to people, just because it's popular doesn't mean it's great, So that's kind of the cold hard truth, but it's the truth, and that's what I try to provide on this show. And going into that, some people listen to the show just because of the vulnerability that people are willing to share. What's something that you're currently struggling with?
I would say that I'm trying to build this brand with 365 Driven, and to be the public speaker, and treat people the right way, and give people advice that I didn't get as a child, or as even a young adult. But I'm trying to avoid coming across as, I don't want to be like another influence type person that's like just always hard selling. That kind of stuff bothers me, because I don't like being pitched to either. So I realize that I do bring a lot of value, and I do help thousands of people, but sometimes I have a problem asking for help. And I'd say that that's something that I've always fought with, because it has a little bit to do with ego. You want to be the one that says, I'm self-made. I did it all myself. I can learn this, and prove to yourself that you can do this. Like, I've taught myself everything. I've done everything on my own. I've never really had a team to do things like this. So I mean, example, like I have the podcast. I did it all myself. I learned how to edit things. I learned how to do the recordings. I learned about the equipment, and I just did it myself. And I taught myself graphic design. I taught myself how to create web pages. All these things I kind of take on as personal challenges, because I'm always craving information in the first place. But I have a real hard time asking people for help. And that's something I feel that I need to improve on. And I have started to improve on that. I've got mentors myself now, but before that, I just really didn't have any. And I realized that having those now is going to get me to where I need to be at a lot faster rate than just trying to do this alone.
Oh man, ego is the enemy, isn't it?
Definitely. It can hold you back.
Yeah, I get that. So many of us do, but we all need help. So we're coming in for landing. So I just got two more questions for you. Where is the best place people can find more of Tony Whatley? Because you've given them some crazy value, and I know you've piqued my interest, and I want to know more about you.
I always point people to one place. It's my website. It's 365driven.com. So 365driven.com. And on there, you will find links to my best-selling book. You'll find links to my social media. I'm pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. And I have a blog and a podcast, and everything's neatly packaged in this one website.
Yeah, it's not hard to find. I'll throw that link in the show notes. Thank God for technology, or if you're not into God, thank whoever made it happen with technology, because just the click of the finger will direct you straight over to getting more of what Tony's doing. So cool. I love it. I do want to end it out with a self-inquisitive question, which is, something that people can ask themselves to sort of break free from the mental hibernation, as I call it. I can give you an example, but I feel like you might know what I mean.
Mm. So something like a thought process of why they're not taking action, perhaps?
Yeah.
To me, I think, especially on social media, because you and I, we frequent that so often, a lot of people fall into the trap of comparing themselves to other people, and they don't realize that people are on different chapters of their lives, whether that's financially or educationally, or just things that are different levels. And they start to look at the highlight reels that everybody else is portraying, and they have self-doubt. But if you can flip that mindset and see if people are actually doing more or achieving more, don't take that as a negative to yourself. See that as a challenge. Like, what do I need to do to achieve that? And use that as a motivator to take on that new challenge. If you see somebody that's like awesome at public speaking or podcasting or whatever, and you admire a quality in somebody else, what that's really telling is you admire a quality in someone else that you would like to have. So pay attention to those pains, and understand that anything is achievable if you want to take the action, but you can't take the easy way out. There's no easy results. There's no easy rewards to anything in life. Anything that's worth having is going to take your effort. And if you're not getting the results you want, you really have to be honest with yourself in that moment and say, hey, am I really honestly giving my 100%? And you'll find that honestly that I don't ever feel like I'm even giving my 100%. I call myself on that out all the time. I consider myself a high running, profile type operational person, but I don't ever feel like I'm running at 100%. And I call myself on my nonsense. And you got to get better at becoming that self-aware to call yourself on your own bullcrap whenever you're not doing something. So it's kind of by all means, set some goals based on what other people may have achieved. Maybe even ask their advice. They're going to help you. You'll find a lot of successful people are willing to share advice, but then you got to execute, and you got to be really honest with yourself. If you're really executing, you'll find that most of the time you're not.
I love that, man. Oh gosh, that's so cool. Guys, my biggest fear is that you listen to this podcast and just kind of hit the next podcast and use it as instead of self-improvement, you use it as entertainment. So please take the time to hit the record button on your phone and just reminisce about the thoughts that you're having that are going through your mind after listening to this interview, because then at least you're putting out there into the universe that this was for a reason. You meant to listen to this. And so I know that you are going to do that because I believe in you, and so does Tony. And I just want to say thanks again, Tony, for being the man to come on the show. And I know this is not going to be the last time we speak.
Yes, Logan, I enjoyed being on there. And yeah, I'd love to hear from your listeners. If they had any questions or thoughts, then I'd be glad to hear from them.
Awesome. Likewise. We'll talk later, Tony.
All right.
There'll be girls across the nation that'll eat this up. They don't know that it's your soul, but could you bottle it up? Get down to the heart of it. No, it's my heart. Your shit out of your luck. Don't make me tell you again. Woo! Love, love, love. Hey. Love, 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 love.
Oh, wow. You made it to the very end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch with your host, Logan Tyler Nelson. To make it to the end, gosh, that doesn't happen very much nowadays. I mean, especially with the constant distraction. So, I appreciate all of the efforts that you just took out of your day to make it to the end. And if you hit that subscribe button and leave a review, you would have no idea what that would mean to me. So thank you so much for taking the time to hit that subscribe button. And if you leave a review, check it out. Just screenshot it, send it to me, and I'd love to host your review out on the show. But don't ever forget, like I say, you matter and you're enough.
Love is the main reason for how all of this happened. Love for all my fans, love for all the shows. Got love for all my memories, no matter where I go. Even if I'm out to nothing, I know there's always something. It's not a fitness test, but it'll always